Well, I think we'll get started here. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out this evening. We are very excited to have you here and for what should be hopefully a lively discussion and opportunity for engagement and getting to know each other in our community. Folks who care about food, access to food, local farms, and just perhaps even bold ideas, wild ideas even. I'm Chad Jemison. I'm the Executive Director of Triangle Land Conservancy. I've been here for 2 years, a short time, but luckily we have folks who have been here for many, many years working on these issues today of local farms and food and feeding the Triangle. We have Alex Hitt, Amy Tornquist, and John Cates, and I'll introduce them. Okay, we'll go here. I'll introduce them more fully in a few minutes. Triangle Land Conservancy has been working.
We're on.
We're on.
I will do that. This sounds better. Thank you. Triangle Land Conservancy is a community conservation organization. We work in the 6 counties across the Triangle region here with communities, with local governments, with farming communities, and we work in 4 main areas: safeguarding clean water. We work with local farms and support local food systems. We work to connect people with nature, and we work to protect iconic places, specifically around wildlife habitat. Places to connect with nature in a fast-growing metropolitan area where you don't have to drive all the way to the coast or to the mountains to have an experience with nature. And we think that's really important for livable cities, healthy cities. We have protected over 16,000 acres over our 30-year history, almost all of those acres in partnership with other organizations and entities. I'd like to invite you to come and explore, if you haven't already, our 5 public nature preserves that we have spread across the counties here: Johnston Mill, Horton Grove here in Durham, Swift Creek in Wake County. We also have a boat launch on the Deep River in Chatham County. If you want to paddle the deep, it's a pretty spectacular place down there. We have a working farm, which you'll see and hear about more shortly. And excitingly, we have 2 more preserves that are on their way. One in Orange County, which will be coming on, you may be hearing about in the coming months and years, and also the iconic Walnut Hill property that was protected last year in southern Wake County. So, wild ideas. The goal of this is to provide a venue, to bring folks from across our communities together for experts in the field and the community to share their ideas around conservation and issues related to conservation facing our metropolitan area, our region, our communities. It's exciting to kick this series off. In the spring, we're going to have our next Wild Ideas, likely in March, focused on getting outside. So wild ideas about how to explore our community outside with friends, with children, with your company, etc. I want to thank our partners here. This year's series is generously sponsored by Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina, with whom we share a commitment to making the Triangle region a healthy and vibrant place to live. And our host sponsor, RTP Foundation here. But just quickly by a show of hands, who's been to this facility before? A number of us, yeah. It's a great place to hold community events. I encourage you to think about that. Their tagline I saw as I was connecting my phone to their internet is inspiring bold ideas. So what a great alignment to have a series of wild ideas in a place that's all about bold ideas. So it taps right into that sort of entrepreneurial and spirited energy that's so so close to the Triangle spirit. And finally, we have donated beer tonight by Lone Rider Brewing Company, and our food tonight is provided, thank you, Amy, by the Sage and Swift Gourmet Catering Company. So we're in for a treat following our session here. I'm excited to launch the Wild Ideas program tonight, Wild Ideas for Feeding the Triangle. We've invited our 3 experts here with deep experience in the local food movement, whom I'll introduce in a moment, to share their wildest ideas about feeding the Triangle as it continues to grow and develop. I want to take just a quick minute to talk about TLC's role in protecting farms and supporting the local food movement. You may know us because of our public preserves, but we've also helped to protect over nearly 5,000 acres of farmland across the region, including the 400-acre Walnut Hill property, the Maple View Farm in Orange County with their delicious ice cream, and over 1,000 acres of farmland in both Johnson County and Chatham County. And we also work to increase access to farmland. It's something we're paying increasing attention to. This brings us to a very short video we'd like to share with you about a partnership we enjoy at Irvin Farm, just outside, a couple miles outside of Carborough. And Kelly Owensby, I believe, is here in the back there. She was staying there. Kelly is a program director at Transplanting Traditions. So I encourage you to find her afterwards if you would like to hear more about this program.
I work full-time at UNC Housekeeping. I work the third shift at night, and then in the daytime, I work full-time here. I come in to farm here and take care of my vegetables. It makes me feel comfortable to come here because I have the opportunity to plant some of my traditional vegetables and to socialize with the Karen community of farmers.
We grow basically everything that you can grow in North Carolina here, but we also grow over 30 different crops that are native to Burma. And so it's really kind of an amazing tropical space when you visit in the middle of summer. Our relationship with the Triangle Land Conservancy began in 2010. We had just received our grant and we were looking for a site in order to really scale up from our community garden into a large-scale farm. And the Triangle Land Conservancy had just started their initiative out here at the Irvin Nature Preserve, and they were looking for a partner in order to farm out here. The program has grown a lot. We started off with 14 families, and each year we have increased the farm by almost an acre. We're at almost 4.5 acres. And now we have 40 families, over 200 adults and children, and we hope to increase each year. We have a waiting list of families that we keep.
My father was a farmer, but I just learned from him practically, not theoretically. But here, I had to go for training on how to be a successful farmer. You have to attend farmer school. So this is giving me more experience and knowledge on how to be a farmer here in this country.
One of the things that we do here the most, and one of the greatest benefits, is that families are able to eat a lot healthier. Not that they can't go to the grocery store and buy broccoli and spinach, but that they are really used to eating, cooking with the vegetables that they're familiar with. Very important to their cultural heritage. So out here, they're able to access those vegetables. For example, 95% of our families say that they now have access to culturally important or significant vegetables, whereas before participating in the program, only 15% of them were able to access those vegetables. 95% of our families have been able to save money, at least in terms of not having to buy groceries and really reducing their food insecurity, which is a big problem in this community, very low-income community. We also have had over $32,000 in sales that goes directly to farmers who are selling over the past 2 years. The future expansion will help the project and our farmers in multiple ways. It will allow us to let families in off of our waiting list. So we want to be able to serve as many families as we can. It'll also let our families who are learning more and are growing more each year to be able to expand their plot size. We have farmers who each year need more space. They're growing more, they're selling more, they're becoming more successful. That land will allow them to expand as well.
I would like to express a sincere thanks to those who provide the land and space for us to farm here. I really feel that this is very important for my family, especially my 2 daughters that are attending Durham Technical Community College. When I work here, both of them follow me, and then they learn how to plant, how to grow, how to sell, and then they follow me to the Chapel Hill Farmers Market. I am really happy. So to all of you who provide the space for us to grow vegetables here, thank you.
Kelly, that was great. Yeah. Well, I want to introduce the panelists. After I introduce them, each will speak for about 5 minutes or so. This is sort of a TED Talk type, wild ideas on feeding the triangle. But after, I don't know. It's good.
Or not. Or not.
It's going global, folks. Well, they'll speak for 5 minutes each, and then we're going to open it up to the community here who's come together to either share your wild ideas, things that you feel are important for this region, or to ask questions of the panel here, or for you to ask questions of each other. Jared Cates. Jared's a native of Chapel Hill. He's with the Carolina Farm Stewardship Association. He's a graduate of UNC School of Social Work, where he received his master's degree. And Jared's been working in the nonprofit sector since his graduation from Appalachian State University in 2003. Jared's a champion for sustainable food and local farms, and we're really glad to have you here to talk about food policy issues in particular. Amy Tornquist is a native of Durham, and I said it looks like I'm allowed to share this. In fact, she was born in the hospital across the street from her restaurant, essentially. So how much more native can you be than that?
Pretty much.
Many of you certainly know her from her role as chef and owner of Watt's Grocery in Durham. But she also has more than 20 years of culinary experience at her catering company, Sage and Swift Gourmet Catering, which we'll be able to enjoy in 30 minutes or less. And was also at the National Museum Cafe. She's been featured in Bon Appetit, Food and Wine, Country Home, Elegant Bride, and more. And Amy has built a reputation for seasonal cooking with local ingredients and her commitment to sustainable agriculture. She is president of the board of directors at Seeds in Durham. Not anymore, recently.
Past president.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. And on the far right is Alex Hitt. For more than 30 years, Alex and his wife Betsy have worked full-time on their 26-acre Peregrine farm in southern Alamance County. In 2006, the couple was honored with a prestigious regional award from the USDA that recognizes farmers whose methods, quote, are profitable, good for families and communities, and beneficial to the environment. They regularly present at regional and national conferences, both advancing their own learning and passing on their knowledge. The Hitts are also helping to grow the next generation of small-scale farmers. Over the 3 decades of Peregrine Farm, they've had 21 people work full-time on their farm from late March to early October.
It's been more than that.
Well, good. And of those, at least 10, probably a bit more than that, are still in farming. And Alex says that they've always believed that more farmers create healthier markets, which helps fuel demand and ultimately helps all small-scale farmers. With that, I will turn it over to Alex for the next several minutes.
Thanks, Chad. And I'm happy to see all of you here tonight. And it's a little daunting to be the first wild idea in a whole series, but I'll see what I can come up with here. A lot of folks thought it was a wild idea that we wanted to be small-scale farmers over 30 years ago. We just wanted to live in the country and make our living there and not have to drive into town and work. And Betsy always says that it was she was deathly afraid of pantyhose. But it is a community that has brought the Triangle food scene to where it is now. There was a few of us that started. Bill Dow, whose farm is actually protected by the Triangle Land Conservancy, is one of the oldest rats in the barn, as I always say. But we all work together to slowly build what has now become quite something. Many folks in the room I know, and folks like Kelly we have worked with over the years. This lady we've known since she's been in business.
Pretty much.
And this one, I've known his father for 30-something years, who's been in the food business. But so what we've tried to do on the farm and in our relationships around the community is sort of guide a sustainable principle of community development and sound business practices. That's kind of what we're known for to a great deal, is that we actually run a real business. Some farmers have trouble with that. But I would say There's two levels that we need to work on now, and I think all of us up here tonight will probably talk more about what we need to do versus what's a great thing happening right now. But there's two levels we need to work on. One, we've been working on a lot, which is what we jokingly refer to as the new and beginning farmer industrial complex. You know, there's some right here in the center of the room. We have spent a lot of energy and a lot of money in this country now, increasingly, to bring new farmers to the land. The average age of farmers is my age, 58, and so we keep, and of course it's been that way since I was 33, so I don't know why it doesn't change. But you know, increasingly we're worried that there won't be enough people to produce our food. They're going to age out. And that's really the case on big scale farms, and particularly the sorts of farms that Triangle Land Conservancy, for the most part, helps preserve 400 and 500 acre places and bigger. But we also have a group of new farmers that are working small ground. And that's an area where particularly land that is in conservation easements is particularly suited to folks who don't already have family land or access to capital to get land. And so one of the wild ideas, and Kelly and her partner George have led the way on this as well, is how do we come up with innovative leases, sound long-term arrangements, so that young farmers can work on land that has been preserved in a conservation easement, or someone else's land who just wants to keep it in farming, and they don't want to lose it from the family, but they're not quite ready to put it into a conservation easement. How do we get people on that land that will do the real hard work to improve that soil and improve that place, and know that at the end of 5 years or 10 years or 20 years that they'll be able to get their money back, or that they have a secure situation? So that's one idea that we need to work on. Another one that we need to work on that Chad and I talked about yesterday, in fact, is if we're going to preserve farmland, and if we're in an area like the Triangle where it's going away in a hurry, what farmland do we preserve? You know, traditionally, what has been preserved or put in conservation easements has been more along the lines, and this is not a bad thing, more along the lines of nature tracks, or along the lines of how do we preserve clean water. But if we really want to preserve farmland, we need to preserve the best farmland. Not just any farmland, we need to preserve the best soil that we have. As much as we all may love North Carolina, the soil's pretty crappy, and particularly in the Triangle. And so there are some good soils, but there's a lot of bad soils. And so what we really need to work on and identify, and Chad and I talked about this yesterday, is where are those best soils? And when those farms come up, they're in danger. Let's work on saving those, so that then we have some really good land to put new young farmers on. The other side of that coin is we have a lot of existing farmers that are really good. And Land Conservancy has a lot of land they have put in easements, like Mapleview Dairy, where they're still farming along, doing great stuff, producing great product for the local market. We need to help encourage those people. It's not just about new, young, hippie farmers, which I used to be. It's about traditional farmers as well. And we're fortunate in North Carolina that this is a small farm economy, has been a small farm economy, that it came from tobacco roots, and so there's a lot of those folks that we can transition. And I'm getting the hook back there, and so I got one more thing that'll.
He can take some.
That's a little unusual, that you all may find unusual. Right now, in large parts of the Triangle, we have too many farmers markets. I know we all hear, let's more farmers markets. Let's start another farmers market. By God, we need farmers markets. There are parts of the Triangle, there's already 25 in certain parts of the Triangle. When I tell friends of that in California, where farmers markets are very much in vogue, they go, 25 markets? Oh my God, how do you guys deal with that? It's too many right now. We don't have enough farmers to actually supply those markets. And so we need to think about, if we're going to open new food access places, CSA pickups, food hubs, farmers markets, let's think about it strategically. Where do they need to be? Where do we actually have a food desert or a town that doesn't have a farmer's market or a neighborhood that can really support a farmer's market, and not just open one because it's the thing to do or because the shopping mall wants to have a farmer's market or some other situation like that. And so I will leave that. That's my wildest idea. I'll throw that bomb out there and step back.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So I'm Amy Tornquist, and I come from a more food perspective, right? I also come from a perspective where my family is from North Carolina, and not just from North Carolina, but really from North Carolina, like 1700 from North Carolina. So I'm a real North Carolinian, so I feel really strongly about it, right? I feel really strongly about all sorts of like the artichoke pickles that the old lady in Hamilton makes, all that kind of stuff, you know, getting peanuts from Windsor, which only my cousin Catherine knows where that is. But, you know, all those kinds of things also really matter to me. And all those things are beginning to go away, right? So I have a couple of things that I would be interested in to see more of those kinds of traditional things kind of happening. I would be thrilled if there were Jerusalem artichoke pickles that were as good as that lady in Hamilton that I could buy at the farmer's market. I was telling them before that I had sorghum from a place in Efland, which is dramatic. Like everybody's like, what? I'm like, it's so dramatic. This is the most awesome thing in the whole world, right? It's super awesome. Like most of the sorghum comes from Tennessee. This is so awesome that sort of we're getting this wonderful, now mind you, we got a sample and lost the jar, right? So whatever. So I've been emailing everything that looks like it says cane and whatever, anyway, to see if I can't find them. But so for me, you know, I want all those kinds of North Carolinian traditions to kind of stay. I want, I hear from the people I get my fish from. So I buy fish from the people who administer the walking fish, community-supported fish. I sort of subsidize the truck getting up here, right? So we have we get fish from them, and the nice lady at the Chef and the Farmer buys fish from them. It's an interesting arrangement. They just text me and say, this is what I'm bringing. And you're like, cool. And that's pretty much the only reply. Or like, ooh, no, bah. Can I smoke that, kind of? Because that sounds awful. But other than that, it's just sort of like, okay. And so one of the things that Bill talks about a lot is that there aren't people fishing, right? It's very restrictive, and so it's also really hard to find small fishermen. A small fisherman is like a small farmer. And it's hard, probably the average age is 58 in the fishing community also. And so for me, that's also important to me. And then, you know, I'm a Durhamite, and so for me, I also look at the people who come in my restaurant and the people I see at the farmer's market, and I really wish that everybody in town had access, right? I find stuff super expensive, and that's really hard, and how do we manage to make sure that farmers get paid an actual wage, right? At the same time, being able to make food available and reasonable priced for those folks who can't afford a precious tiny carrot, right? Because they're expensive. Have you ever priced a tiny carrot? Like, he and I talk about carrots a lot. He doesn't like the small carrot. I'm a small carrot person.
But you also said, I can pay you a lot for a small carrot.
Right, because there's a cachet in a small carrot, right? So for me, I worked with seeds, trying to, you know, connect folks in communities where they had lost farming and lost gardening back into the community and back in with children especially. My children who go to a kind of snotty little school, they do that too. But again, it's, you know, it's harder when folks are not particularly diverse. You know, you're preaching to the choir. You know, you have it's lovely that they have a garden at Durham Academy, but they probably also have gardens at their houses, and they all shop at the market, and they're, well-to-do, and they have money to buy all that stuff and know all about that stuff and travel and whatever. I would really love to see even grocery stores in places. I mean, markets too, but also grocery stores. And then to start on a sort of positive note, I have seen a lot of growth in finding local foods. So the place where I buy my produce, the wholesale produce place, now stocks a vast array of local stuff that I can find. I know exactly where it comes from. So like my deal is I don't want to, you can't just call it local. I want to know where the farm is and who's doing it and all that stuff. And they're now sourcing a ton local. They also give to the Farm to Fork, which is where we are on the board. And so I do see a lot more of that. I see a lot more ability of people to buy local in their groceries, but I also wish that everybody in Durham had that ability.
When I was coming, before I came today, I asked Jenny, who works for us and is becoming partners with us, I said, what's your wild idea? And she said, raise the minimum wage. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she gets paid much more than minimum wage, let me tell you that. But so she wasn't necessarily worried about herself because she has a farm. But right. Yeah, it is how right. do we afford that?
Right, but so from a small business perspective, I also believe in the minimum wage being raised, right? I don't even know what the minimum wage is. I haven't paid somebody the minimum wage in forever. But I would also like customers to be willing to support us in our paying our folks the minimum wage. And I'm not convinced that your average diner, for example, is willing to also participate in the subsidization of that. I'm not convinced. I think we all want it in a sort of happy place, but when their steak is $1 more, they're not so cool about it. But that's me being cynical, but whatever.
All right, well, I'm not the rock star of these two folks. I'm going to bring out a couple of notes that I'm going to glance at occasionally as I talk. But I just have to say, I have been. We all are part of the food system our entire lives. You eat food every day, and I'm going to be talking about more of the kind of the food system and maybe some wild ideas for the food system. And I am much more, I am not a seasoned food system veteran. I have been working for the Carolina Farm Stewardship Association for a couple of years now. But I have had a whole array of food system experiences throughout my life. But I just want to say that I'm humbled to be on stage with the two of you all because really, I'm serious. Alex and Amy, you all have paved the way in the Triangle and really set the stage throughout North Carolina for this local food resurgence that is really happening across our state. So as a young person coming into this movement, I just want to thank you all for the work that you all have put in and for the work of Triangle Land Conservancy. So when I talk about a food system, I'm really talking about anything or anyone working or that exists in really any capacity that affects the production, distribution, sale, consumption, and disposal of food. So you think about it, that's a big old system. There's lots of pieces of that system, lots of people in that system, and lots of systems that touch that system, if you really want to think about it. And then when I say community food system, which I'll probably say a few more times before I'm done, we're really talking about a system that emphasizes the people in that system, the human relationships, the place or the location, and really sustainability throughout the entire part of that system. So a community food system is more people-focused than, say, just a food system, just getting food from farm to plate. And so I would have to say that these two folks are honestly community food system pioneers, because you all have worked for years to push consumer interest towards local foods, telling people about local products, bringing delicious product to market, and getting people to tune into this conversation. And I myself, like I said, I've been working for Carolina Farm Stewardship Association for a couple of years, but in a minute I'll tell you more about what we do as an organization. But throughout my life, I've had the chance of experiencing the food system in a broad array of experiences. My dad knew Alex because he was the manager, the head chef of Pie Wacket Restaurant, which is a restaurant in Chapel Hill for many years. So I kind of grew up like in the trenches, like cleaning walk-ins and cleaning the kitchen when I was when I was 8 and 10, earning a few bucks here and there. And then after that, I started off at Weaver Street Market was my first job when I was 15, and then throughout my teenage and 20s, I was always line cooking or prepping or serving food or selling beers or selling pizza at Pepper's Pizza. And so I got to see a broader range of kind of different aspects of the food system. And so I give you this background, I mention these personal experiences because I really want you all to think about deeply what a food system is and all of the different aspects of it, from retail to food service, to food pantries, to nonprofits, to farming, to food policy. These are all parts of the food system. And right now, my current work at CFSA is a lot around agricultural policy. I work, Carolina Farm Stewardship Association works in North and South Carolina to provide education and support for both consumers and farmers around sustainable growing practices. And I'm on their agricultural policy team. So I deal with a lot of policies that affect the food system. And also currently I'm working a lot with food councils. So food councils and thinking about things from a whole systems perspective is kind of the wild idea that I'm here to talk about. And so the project I'm involved with is called the Community Food Strategies Initiative. It's based out of the Center for Environmental Farming Systems out of NCA&T, NC State University, and North Carolina Department of Agriculture. And this project is being led by a woman named Christy Shai-Day. And she is a wonderful systems thinker, and she's been working with groups across North Carolina. And really the ultimate goal of this project is to provide resources and support and technical assistance for communities that are looking to organize at their community level, looking to talk about this food system and how they can find opportunities to improve it. And they're finding the way to do that is through creating food councils. So that's what we do, is we help folks create food councils. And currently in North Carolina, I'd say for the past 20 years across the country, food councils have been growing. And in North Carolina, there are a number of established food councils now that have kind of popped up since 2008 or so. And just recently, Orange County, they held an event. They're going to form an Orange County Food Council. Wake County is in the process of forming the Capital Area Farm and Food Network. And then tomorrow night, I would invite you all to attend an event in Durham. If you are a Durham resident or if you work in Durham, there's been a small organizing group putting on an event from 6 to 8 p.m. tomorrow night to form what will eventually be a Durham Food Council. They are calling it the Durham Farm and Food Network. And that event is from 6 to 8 at Shepherd's House Church tomorrow night at 107 North Driver Street in Durham. So I would encourage you to come out and participate. And so I guess, my wild idea is getting everyone at the table to sit down and work together. And my work with these groups, I've really seen how public health, how economic development, how cooperative extension and folks supporting farmers and agriculture, to tourism, to local government and elected officials can use food councils as this way to really work collaboratively together to find solutions for their communities. So that's my wild idea. Working together.
As the microphone comes up, who here today read the op-ed piece in the New York Times by Mark Bittman about the 3 things you can do, or the 3 things that control our food? And one of them was the government, and he says, forget about that, you can't deal with them. And the other was the big corporations like PepsiCo, he says, forget about that, you can't deal with them. But you can control your own food intake. And he said local government's not too bad. And so what Jared and company are working on is trying to come at this from the local neighborhood county level, because we've had 2 food policy councils on the state level. One 20 years ago that I was involved in that died, and then one that the legislature approved 4 years ago, and then it was going great guns and it cut the legs out from underneath it. So now what we're having to do is go even to a lower area where we actually have control over it.
I think this is an easy question. What is a food council?
Yeah, that's probably a good question to answer. So a food council is typically, it depends on the community and what the needs are of the community. And they exist in many different ways because every community is different. But typically a food council is a group of food consumers, food producers, nonprofits, folks who work at county government, maybe the planning department, public health, the school system, really an intentional group that has an intentional structure that brings all of those voices in together and usually meets monthly to really figure out, are there any duplications in our services that we're providing to our food system? Are there any gaps that we're really missing in supporting our community food system? And so having those discussions and getting buy-in from the folks in power to actually create change. Yeah, their purpose is to improve their community food system. And so that could be a convening of the schools to provide a training for teachers about how they can integrate food and gardening in their curriculum. It could be going to county commissioners and saying, hey, we want the county to purchase 10% of any food they're buying here locally. And so many people have heard of them as food policy councils. That's kind of the big name that was floating around. And now it's kind of evolving into food councils or food networks.
Okay. So as a young person and really passionate about the movement towards what all you 3 addressed, towards local foods, I think it's not really a wild idea, but an important one is, you addressed it a little bit, but education, really targeting education in schools, starting at a young age, relating to like farm education. You could talk about how to farm, how to create your own vegetables and fruits in your own garden, to the importance of farming and local foods. And I think that's something that is extremely lacking. Not only in this area, but all around the U.S. And that really forms a disconnect between socioeconomic classes, which is, I think, a very important issue to bring together to be able to make progress in the local food movement. So just like if other people or if you guys had any ideas or things to follow up with about that subject.
We were talking about this a little bit earlier because the Food Council will be working with the public schools, and I have tried to work with the public schools, and they're kind of hamstrung in their ability to both provide local foods and also cook local foods, and they really are hamstrung. Like, they wanted so desperately for me to work with them, but on so many levels it was impossible, right? So they have no money for someone to cook things, right? So there's no money for the human to make things that are fresh for the kids. They have a completely insane requirements on what can be brought in, as far as, so you can have margarine, but you can't have butter. Now, mind you, okay, right? So you can have no-fat cheese. Just like, what's no-fat cheese? Like, don't have cheese if you don't want cheese. It's just like, yeah. How do you teach somebody to eat if you give them no-fat cheese, right? It's just like, whatever. And they have contracts with produce companies that are big contracts, so they're less expensive, but that also means that limits their ability to get things that are local, which might cost a little more, which paradoxically also might help all their people if they, because it's a circle, right? The people who are in the schools, their people are working there, and if they got paid more and so it's really hard, right? So your average school, like I went to a school and tried to make a local meal, and it was like not happening. Right, it was just not going to happen. Like they had no humans, and they had these rules, and I couldn't even bring it in. I mean, it was just crazy. So I'm hoping that this kind of policy conversation in a sort of food council way will allow them to be able to do a little bit more of that. Because I think it is really hard, and the public school is a great way to teach everybody. And if we could get in it, we'd all be interested to help. Right? I know I could probably get 10 chefs who would go out and help and be involved. I'd be thrilled to. It's really hard. It's unfortunate, but it's really, really hard to sustain also.
And I'd like to so one of the things that makes it hard is GAP certification, Good Agricultural Practices certification. This is a food safety certification that North Carolina Department of Instruction requires. That all the produce and food that they buy is GAP certified. And so that basically means that a lot of farmers who aren't GAP certified, are you GAP certified?
No.
Not GAP certified. It's an expensive process to go through. And so farmers who are not GAP certified don't even have the opportunity to sell into public schools. And that's a case in many states who are using that basically as a liability tool to protect themselves from kids getting sick.
But it means no small local farms.
It means no small local farms, and then it also means that teachers are afraid because they're like, oh, I can't grow food in the classroom, and I can't share it with my kids, and that actually isn't even true. You can have kids growing in the classroom. They can be eating that food as part of their curriculum. You just can't be bringing that food into the cafeteria and then serving it through the cafeteria, because then that would be technically against the rules. So it is about, and also too with schools, it's about finding that teacher or that principal who is like willing to kind of like, oh, I'll bend the rules a little bit here, and who is not completely scared of the bureaucracy to work with you. And a lot of the folks are just kind of scared of the bureaucracy and don't really have the time to engage and to fit it into their already busy schedules about kind of weaseling around and making stuff happen. And so yeah, it's an absolute barrier, and it's a shame because kids are really the vehicle to getting change in adults as well. And if you can get kids to like healthy food, then they're going to go home and they're going to be begging of that food from their parents, and hopefully getting them to buy it and eventually like it as well.
Well, part of the issue is also if I go into a school, it is not my aim to overburden the already overburdened food service worker, right? That person had like 70,000 things on their list before I was like, let's make local food, right? I can't do that. That's not fair, right? That person is struggling to get all their stuff done by themselves, right? So I felt very awkward, kind of. I was willing to do whatever, but it was more they wanted me to teach, and I'm like, well, I can't teach because there's no way this person, this one human who has to feed all these people by herself, is going to actually be able to do that, right? That's just sort of the bottom line. Like it's not feasible, and it's not even nice to sort of,
Yeah. My name is Grace Hackney. I'm a clergy person in the area, and gosh, I'm so excited to be here. I feel your frustration. I want to share a wild idea that's starting to happen, and Jared, I want you to make certain that you have clergy people on those food councils.
Most definitely.
Our bishop has just appointed me to a new ministry called Life Around the Table, and part of what we will be doing, and hopefully we'll be seeing folks like you and people in this room many times, is to church people eat. But most people in churches do not eat good, local, healthy food. We've seen potlucks go from the farmers that made the green beans and things from their farm to the table, to ordering a party tray from Costco or getting a bucket of chicken. And so one of our goals is we're going to be doing an eating practices survey of all 107 United Methodist churches in our district. And then we're going to start lifting up those good practices and naming those places in need of redemption. That's a nice way of saying it.
That's great.
And
oh man, that's awesome.
But long term, what we would like to do this first year is we'd like to map the food deserts and just show churches where the food deserts are in their community, and then hook them up with farmers and chefs, so that at least the food that we're eating as people of faith and sharing in the community. So we'll also be looking at food pantries. What kind of food are you actually giving out at your food pantries? And making the connection between what we eat and what we serve other people to eat as part of the fundamental health of a local community. You know, that the local community is only as healthy as the soil, and that we're connected to the soil and to the plants and to the food and to every other person. So my question for you all is, you know, can I come and talk to you sometime? and also just making those networks. As this is a bold, wild idea for our conference, because I'm the first person ever to be actually appointed to this kind of position. And I've been working without pay on this project and have just received a grant from the Duke Endowment to start this work this next year. So I just want to throw that out there. And
so I assume, because Duke Endowment, et cetera, that you're working with my friends at the Rural Advancement Foundation International.
I'm talking to them next week,
in their Come to the Table project,
yeah.
because that's exactly
Come to the Table.
what they've been working on.
Yeah, Come to the Table. I think this is going to be a little bit more intentional to the particular local church and what they're putting on their plate.
And their main focus so far has been to work with a vast group of religious organizations and get the principles out there, so that then maybe an individual group can move on. But they have incredible resources, so make sure you go talk to them.
I do. Thank you.
I happen to be their boss. And so I'll make sure that they talk to you.
They're bringing a group of people together in a couple weeks.
Good. And we talked about this yesterday on the radio show that Chad and I were on, about that a lot of folks think food deserts are only in cities, and there's a lot of them in the country.
Right.
Because there's a lot of folks who can't get to grocery stores or don't have gardens anymore, and the churches are really the avenue to help those folks.
In some communities, I think the churches are the only avenue to help us. I mean, in rural communities in North Carolina, the church is the place of community, and that really is where cultural exchange happens. And I know that North Carolina Council of Churches, they have kind of their healthy initiative, and I know that they have been talking about expanding that out even more and giving more incentives and small grants to churches as they do take on a more health-centered focus. So I would love to connect with you. Yeah, I would love to connect with you and learn more about your efforts.
Going to take some
wild ideas in this room coming. Half hour, 45 minutes, an hour outside.
Just through the idea that the Bible, book of Genesis is the relationship between God and people only got to the boiling point when people not eat. God kicked them out of the garden. The first rule that God makes is what you should. That rule, it disqualifies. not a public school. They know very well. If they consume them as prescribed, that will kill them. And all other animals, on any scale, that will. So, Iowa, Washington. Desert is not out there. Over anything that does. What it is, you can call it. Was food justice or economic justice? Justice.
You guys want to quick response to that? Well, hi everyone. I'm Catherine Baird, Director of Conservation at Triangle Land Conservancy, and really just wanted to give another big round of applause and thank you to our awesome panel. Can we do that? Thank you. And this is clearly an ongoing and rich discussion, and so I hope you'll join us afterwards for food and drink. And I just want to say a real big thank you on behalf of all of us, all of the staff and the board at Triangle Land Conservancy. We're really excited about this series, this being the important kickoff, but we will be doing one Wild Ideas about connecting with nature and being outside in the spring, and so I really hope you all will join us for that one as well. As a closing note, I just want to say that we did have a drawing, and that Reagan Hale is the winner of Good Bag and Water Bottle. I'll hand that back to you. And also, Jared mentioned the Food Policy Council meeting tomorrow night, but we also have a little handout on our table, which is transforming wild ideas into action, which a number of specific things you can do to be part of sort of the local food community in ways that you may be doing already or other things you may not know about. So thank you so much. Join us. If you haven't had a beer already and would like one, please make sure you get a ticket and a stamp on your hand, and enjoy. Thank you so much.